it chases me down fast till I'm found leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God, yeah. When I was your foe, still your love fought for me. You have been so, so good to me. When I felt no worth, you paid it all for me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down far till I found leaves the 99. And I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God, yeah. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I found leaves the 99. And I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God, yeah. My hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I dare not trust the sweetest frame, but only trust in Jesus' name. Christ alone, cornerstone, weak made strong in the Savior's love. Through the storm, He is Lord, Lord of all. When darkness seems hide his face. I rest on his unchanging grace. In every high and stormy gale, my anchor holds within the veil. Christ alone, cornerstone, weak made strong in the Savior's love. Through the storm, He is Lord, Lord of all. He is Lord, Lord of all. He is Lord, Lord of all. Christ alone, cornerstone, weak made strong in the Savior's love. Through the storm, He is Lord, Lord of all. When He shall come with trumpet sound, oh, may I then in Him be found, dressed in His righteousness alone, for to stand before the throne.
Good morning, New Garden. It's so good to be with y'all today. I have been gone for the past 2 weeks, so I'm especially glad to be back with y'all today. It's always good to be with our church family, worshiping together and being together. If this is your first time with us, we are especially glad that you're here. We're so excited to meet you. We want to connect with you. And one really cool way that we want to do that is through a Connect card. You might have seen these on the welcome table in the lobby. And the thing that this will do is help us to, we'll know your name, we'll get your email. That's going to keep you in the loop with what's going on with us. But we're not going to send you 1,000 emails, I promise. But the best thing about our Connect card is that you get to choose one of 4 charities. And whichever one you choose, we are going to donate $10 to whichever charity you pick. So please, please, if this is your first time with us, fill out a Connect card and help us to give back to our community. Another way you can give back is simply by checking in on Facebook or tagging your location on Instagram at New Garden Church. It's the last Sunday of this month, so I believe we will have a different check-in partner next week, so be sure to check in. Oh, just kidding. It's 3 months in a row, so today, it still counts. It's a good thing to do. So go ahead, you can pull out your phone right now, check in at New Garden Church, because every check-in is going to go toward helping to build schools. So please do that. We love to be a part of this school and to support what they're doing here in our community, and we would love to be part of education outside of this country as well. So please check in. The hashtag is Education for All. Yes, you can add that if you would like. Next week is an exciting Sunday. We are having another Super Duper Family Sunday. If you were at our last Super Duper Family Sunday, you know it was a good time. We had a skit acted out for us by our kids. We had fun songs and some interactive time, and so we would love for you to be there. I personally love when we all get to stay in one room, and so it's going to be an awesome time. Please join us next week, and our kids and sprouts will be with us as we worship together for the whole time. Whew. I get winded these days a lot easier than I used to. Another exciting announcement is we have t-shirts. So if you've been wondering, I've had this New Garden shirt for 4 years, or maybe I've been here for a while and I don't know how to get one, this is good news for you. We've got new t-shirts that are going to be available to you. If you've never had one, your first one is free. If you have had one before, or you want to tack on some extras, they are $5. And here's the options. That's what they're going to look like. We have kids sizes as well as adult sizes, and we would love for you to be able to represent New Garden wearing a t-shirt whenever you'd like. So there will be a Google form available in the newsletter starting this week and on social media, so keep an eye out for that. If you need that, texted to you, if that's confusing, let us know. We want everyone to have a t-shirt who wants one, and it's exciting. So keep an eye out for that on social media and in the newsletter. And finally, Fall Retreat is coming up in November, the 4th through the 6th. That's right. It's exciting. Fall Retreat is for everyone ages 0 to 110. So if you're in that age range, Fall Retreat is for you. It's a really fun weekend where we get to spend time together, play games, hang out. We'll have a theme where we're gonna have some teachings that will revolve around that theme and worship. It's just gonna be a lot of fun and you don't wanna miss it. So the signups for that is on our website and in the newsletter. It's on social media sometimes as well. So please sign up for Fall Retreat. If you can't come for the whole weekend, come while you can. We'd love to have you because we won't be meeting here that Sunday. We'll all be at Fall Retreat. So please plan on being there. It's going to be a great time. But I am so glad to be back with y'all today. We're going to continue in worship, and our kids and Sprouts will exit out this back door. So please pray with me, and then we'll go. Dear God, thank you so much for today and for the sunshine. We pray that this time will be a time that brings glory to you, that we're able to focus on what truly matters. Help us to have open hearts and open ears and to worship wholeheartedly during this time. Thank you for Jesus. It's in his name we pray.
Lord, I come, I confess, bowing here, I find my rest. Without you, I fall apart. You're the one that guides my heart. Lord, I need you. Where sin runs deep, your grace is more. Where grace is found is where you are. And where you are, Lord, I am free. Holiness is Christ in me. Lord, I need you. Oh, I teach my song to rise to you. When temptation comes my way, and when I cannot stand, I'll fall on you. Jesus, you're my hope and stay. Jesus, you're my hope and stay. Lord, I need you, oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness, oh God, how I need you. My one defense, my righteousness, oh God, how I need you. You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you, I worship you. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are here, touching every heart. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, healing every heart. I worship you, I worship you. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. 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 You are here, turning lives around. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, mending every heart. I worship you, I worship you. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop, you never stop working. You never stop, you never stop. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working.
Well, the battery on my fan's a little low this morning, so we could be done super early. Just depends on when the fan decides to stop working. Unlike God, who never stops working. Amen. So as we started this month, I was really intent on doing something with some continuity so that I didn't just get on a soapbox and stand for 30 minutes every morning and talk about stuff that I felt was important. So for the past 3 weeks, we talked through the first 3 books of Psalms, and now we're going to be in Psalm 4. So we kind of get there this morning. Just want to kind of walk us through how we got here, so we have some continuity, understand that we're kind of building one on top of the other as we get from one place to the next. We started with Psalm 1, and we talked about how it was the foundation for the whole book, foundation of the book of Psalms, and in that it taught, or it spoke to the reality of, okay, if we want to be people of God, we've got to pick where we're going to have our life. We're going to have to pick where we have to choose where we want to root ourselves, where we want to plant ourselves, and we're going to have to pick what we want to be about in life. And the psalmist there in Psalm 1, we're not giving the author, but the psalmist there talks about how those that choose to walk with God are so much better off than those who choose to walk with the world. And that the image that's given to us is like a tree that's replanted in Eden, like a tree that's planted by the waters, the fresh waters, the life-giving waters of Eden, and how that informs and shapes our lives and makes us into who, and this is the key, God created us to be. Not who we want to be or not who we think we ought to be, but who God created us to be, because God created all of us with a purpose. Everybody is unique. Everybody is built in a certain way, and God gave all of us talents and abilities, and He expects us to live into a purpose that He's created for us, to be part of His story. And that's the key, right? That's the part that we struggle sometimes, wanting to be part of His story versus being part of the world's story or our own story. And so Psalm 1 was about deciding where we walk. And then Psalm 2 was about, okay, those who plant themselves with God find our refuge in God. We talked about how fear and worry are the currency of the world, right? Fear and worry are what drive everything in our world. Politics, sales, everything is driven by fear, because if we can be made to fear something enough, we'll do something to protect ourselves. We'll do almost anything to protect ourselves from that. And so we're driven from one side of safety to another side of fear. So if we decide we're going to plant ourselves with God, and God is going to be the way we're going to live our lives, or what God designed us for, then we're also going to find our refuge in God. And we're not going to allow those, I don't want to call them silly, because it's not, but we allow the fears of the world and the way of the world to impact us in such a way that draws us from the path that God has designed us to be, where God is taking us to, and from what God offers, which is so much more than what the world offers. And I think that exchange that we do is it doesn't make any sense. And we're going to talk about that again this morning, how we exchange what God offers for what the world offers, and why we're never satisfied in the midst of that. And then last week in Psalm 3, we talked about how when we choose to place our life with God, and how we find our refuge in God, that then God is a shield about us. And not only that, but God's a shield about us, and God is our glory. God is our focus of life, and God is the one that when we're down and when we're downtrodden, and when we think that nothing can get any better, we think that everything is so bad, God is the one who reaches down and says, no, it's not that bad. No, He's the one who lifts our head. And so as we kind of finish this little mini sermon series here from Psalms, we're going to finish in Psalm 4, where he talks about blessed are those who do all these things and find all these things, because this brings us to a place where God offers us joy and God offers us peace. But before we get to that, let's talk a little bit about circumstance, because like a couple weeks ago when I talked about fear and worry, I wanted to be careful and not create this idea that there's something wrong with us if we have fear and worry. There's something wrong with us if we can't seem to detach ourselves from the world and what the world is leading us to. I don't want to leave that impression this morning. So I want to talk about a couple of things that have happened in my life in the past couple of weeks, and some people in here have tracked along with me. As I approach this lesson on Thursday to write it, my process is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I read a lot. I read the text, I spend time in prayer, and then on Thursday I sit down and I write my sermons. On Thursday, before I started writing my sermon, I learned that a friend of mine lost his wife in an accident last week. His wife's 50 years old. I have a son who is in college age. Tragic. when I came across it and I learned about it and talked about it, and tragic events, right? Circumstances beyond what I can fathom or even want to even consider or think about. A few weeks ago, one of my friends, the guy that leads worship at Central Pike, where I was at for 14 years, a guy I would consider to be a good friend, was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. He's 50 years old. He's got kids that, again, that are like college age. And he's not in a good place health-wise right now. And so as I sit down and I move towards the text and I start to push all my thoughts and everything through the filters of what I'm trying to do, how do we talk about peace and how do we talk about joy in the midst of life? In the midst of circumstances that rage against us and go against us all around us. And I tell you, my knee-jerk reaction is that I want to jump to the academic end of the spectrum, and I want to talk about words, and I want to define words, and I want to root them out, and I want to lay it, okay, well, this is joy, and this is happiness, and this is this. But the reality is, and this is where we just kind of have to live in some stuff. The reality is, life is not like a 30-minute sitcom, is it? It's not like a 60-minute drama on TV. It's not even like a 2-hour movie where at the end everything gets resolved, the hero wins the day, everything gets brought back together, and everyone goes home happy and satisfied. That's not life. Life is messy. Life is filled with ambiguity. Life is filled with tension. And the reality of that is because we live in a broken world. We are, to a very real extent, we're the recipient of decisions that were made a long time ago. That doesn't mean we're slaves to them. But we live in a reality that was created well before us. And so we live in this broken world, and we try and figure out how to navigate this broken world when things like cancer hit us in the face, or when things like car accidents hit us in the face. And I think it's helpful, and I think it's healthy for us to sometimes live in the tension of life. Live in the tension of life that doesn't bring easy answers. To live in the tension of life where we can't just say, oh, well, this happened for this reason, or that happened for that reason, and because of this and because of that. No, sometimes there's no answers, and we just have to live with it. And that's a good thing, because that causes us to rely on God a whole lot more. Because when the answers can't easily be rooted out, we have nothing to do but fall back on our faith and say, God, I really don't understand what's going on here, but I'm going to trust you in the process. Last week we talked about David and the situation in life that kind of surrounded Psalm 3, and David was living in a mess of his own creation, right? He was living in a mess that he made, but in the midst of that he still found peace in that shield that was around him. Now, I want to be careful and say, in no way do I think a car accident or cancer is a blessing from God. I don't think those families it was created by, or they deserved it, or anything else. And you won't ever hear me say to somebody who is hurting or somebody who's experienced a great loss that it's part of God's great plan, because I don't believe that. And I don't think those words are helpful to people who are hurting. This is a freebie. When you go talk to somebody who's hurting and you don't know what to say, don't say anything. Yeah. Tell them you love them. Tell them you're here for them, and then sit quietly with them. Because silence is important and silence is needed much more than us giving platitudes that aren't helpful. And one of those platitudes is, it's part of God's plan. You don't know that, don't say it. I think they had the right idea during Bible times of lamenting, where they would tear their clothes and they would sit with sackcloth and ashes, and they would just grieve the moments. And we often don't give space to grief in our culture. We rush through the funeral process. We rush through the surgery process. We rush through everything. And there's almost this unwritten expectation that once we get through all that stuff and all that stuff is done, that everybody ought to be good now. Let's get on with life. Let's act like everything is great, and let's move forward. But guess what? Sometimes life is horrible. Sometimes life is hard. Sometimes life is unfair. But we serve a God who understands. We serve a God who empathizes. And we serve a God who is present to us. And whether we realize it in that moment, and it's often it's a subconscious understanding that God is with us in those moments. And at the same time, God will be there and He'll help us move to the other side of the spectrum when we're ready. And there's definite ends to the spectrum, right, of joy and peace and pain and suffering and all the stuff that's going on. And David, like us, was living across the spectrum where on one end he was running from his life, from his son, and on the other end he was worried about petty and silly things that was causing him to stay up at night. And so let's take a minute to step back from the deep end, because that was some really deep and some really serious stuff. And let's talk more about day-to-day stuff that intersects with us, almost all of us, on a daily basis. Because we come to Psalm 4 and we come to really a conversation between David and God, and then David and those in the world around him. It's one-sided because it's just David talking, but there's a lot happening here that we need to hear and we need to understand as we walk through life. And so in verse 1, David says, "Answer me when I call to you, my righteous God. Give me relief from my distress. Have mercy on me and hear my prayer." Now, given your and my really rudimentary understanding of prayer, because we may think we have a good grasp on it, but really I'm not sure we have even a small grasp on it, but given our understanding of prayer, is God ever not listening? God, it's double negative. God is never not listening. God is always listening. So why is it there at times, and we're not much unlike David, right? Why is it at times that we think God isn't listening? Sometimes do we think we're not important enough to be heard? Because some of us can grow up in such harsh religious circles that we can come to this understanding in our own minds that we're not worthy of God, not even approaching God with our prayers, and God's not going to listen to us. Are we too bad? Are we too evil that God's not going to hear? And here's a funny one. Is God too busy? There's that story in the Old Testament where there's the prophets, and I should have looked this up. It just came out. There's a prophet, and he's fighting against the prophets of Baal, and they're like, and he's praying, and they're like, "Hey, pray a little louder. Maybe your God's asleep." See, but the reality is, we tend to revert to an 8-year-old when we don't get our way, right? And we yell and we scream and we holler and we think, God's not listening. Give me what I want. And there's like, answer me when I call to you, my righteous God. And then again, he's trying to placate God. My righteous God, give relief to me. Like a child trying to manipulate a situation, swooning on the couch. Have mercy on me in my really bad time. And so he continues and he says, how long will you people turn my glory into shame? How long will you love delusions and seek false gods? You see, David turns his anger and frustration from God to the people that are around him. And that phrase right there, people turn my glory, takes us back to Psalm 3 where David talks about, you are a shield about me. You are my glory. You are the one that is my focus in life. And so he's looking around the people around him who I would guess he thinks you ought to be tracking like I'm tracking. You ought to be serving God like you ought to understand this more than I do. How is it that my focus is on God and you guys aren't getting it? How long will you turn my focus on God into shame? And you see, David juxtaposes a life that's focused on God with a life that's focused on the world. And you see, that's the hallmark of an unpeaceful life. That's the hallmark of an unjoyful life. An unjoyful life is seeking fulfillment separated from God, or seeking fulfillment apart from God. Because that becomes the heart of the entire discussion. What we set our eyes on, what we focus on, becomes the most important thing to us. And when we focus our attention out there, we start pursuing things that we either cannot attain, or that if we get them, we can't keep them. And we turn our backs on things like joy and peace that God freely offers. And instead we want power. And instead we want control. And instead we want money. And instead we want prestige and respect. And all of these things, when they become out of reach, when we lose them, we lose the hope, we lose the peace, we lose the joy that God is offering. And I think the reality of the discussion is that we not only have to give those things up, we have to give up our desire for those things. Because it's easy for us to divest ourselves of stuff, right? But it's not easy for us to divest ourselves of the want for stuff. And so he continues his tirade against the people around him, and he says, "Tremble, and in your anger do not sin. When you're on your beds, search your hearts and be silent. Offer sacrifices of the righteous and trust in the Lord." See, he's talking to those that he thinks are opposed to God. He says, all this out here that you think is important, all this out here that you think you really want, all that stuff's going to come crashing down. Life is going to hit you. Circumstances are going to hit you. And when life hits you, what are you going to do? Because our immediate reaction is that we are going to blame who? We're going to blame God. Now, in the NIV, in your anger is not in the text, it's in the footnote. That means that it was in some commentaries, in some manuscripts, and not in other ones. And so I think it really works here because David's saying, look, once you figure it all out, don't get angry with God. Because when you get angry with God, you're going to sin. Don't look for somebody else to blame when you get on a path that you shouldn't have been on and when you end up in a really bad place because of that path that you chose. If we choose or plant ourselves anywhere but with God in Eden, we shouldn't be surprised when we end up in a bad place. Eugene Peterson, The Message, he says, let your heart do the talking there in that section where it says, search your hearts and be silent. Let your heart do the talking, not your brain. And I think that's a powerful image of the struggle that exists in our own lives between the intelligence and the heart, if you will, and how we struggle with that in our own lives and where we try and rationalize. Earlier I talked about, I want to rationalize stuff out so that I don't have to feel it. I think that's what we do. We try and rationalize stuff out so we don't actually have to feel it. David turns back to God in 6 and 7, and he says, many, Lord, are asking, who will bring us prosperity? Let the light of your face shine on us. Fill my heart with joy when their grain and new wine abound. And so David turns back and he's wrestling with, okay, God, what is it going to look like for prosperity to be a part of my life? For the world, in that day and time, it was grain and new wine. At harvest time is when all the stuff came in and they gathered all the stuff and they had all these riches. They're like, look at this stuff. God is great, God is good, God has given me all this stuff. New car, new house, I've got status, I've got power. And the plea from David is one we should live in and we should try and relish in our own lives. God, fill my heart with joy. We talked about several times the past week, there's nothing wrong with verbalizing what we need or what we want. We verbalize when we need to get rid of something. Let's verbalize when we want something. Lord, I'm having a hard time with this. Can you fill me with joy so that I can get through this? Take away my desire for what the world is offering and let my joy be in you, my Lord. Replace the wants of the world with the joy that only God can supply. Bless us in ways that only God can bless us. Ask for those things. Treat your prayer life like it is real. Don't just say platitudes. Interact. Because does God already know your heart? And the whole church said, yes, God already knows your heart. So David says in 8:9, he says, in peace I will lie down and sleep, for you alone, Lord, make me dwell in safety. See, once we figure out how to handle all that exterior noise that's out there in the world, peace becomes a much more attainable goal. Because the drone of more will be loud and overwhelming if you let it be. And it will rob us of peace because we can never get what? We can never get more. We can never get enough. And I think it's amazing how little we will exchange or trade, or how easily we will exchange the peace of God for the junk of the world. That one day somebody's got to come along and go away and get rid of. And for David's contemporaries, it was grain and new wine, which brought them power and prestige and money and all that stuff. And it would be a great calamity whenever there was a famine or bad things happened, because that's where their life was focused. And so what is it for you and I? What is the thing, or what are the things that you are allowing to rob you of joy and peace? Because what we do is we convince ourselves that we're really good, right? We're really good at convincing ourselves. We convince ourselves that if we can just attain X, then I'll be happy. See, if you're climbing the corporate ladder, if you're climbing any ladder at all, there's always a rung higher, and there's always somebody where? Ahead of you. Even if you own your own business. You don't have to look very far to see somebody who's doing better than you're doing. And you know what you can do? You can sit back and you say, if I could just get to that amount of sales per month, I would be happy. And the list is going to change from person to person. But the root is the same. Power, control, the love of money, prestige. And I think we become so invested in the world that we are really blinded to how negative that impacts our lives. I think we have bought so deeply into the reality that the world wants us to believe that we ignore how negatively impacted our families are, our homes are, our marriages are, whenever we choose to run after all the stuff that God says, look, I will give you joy and I will give you peace. We're like, nah, I'm going to get it over here. This is one of those lessons I think God teaches me every day. I look at my kids and I'm like, hey, if you would just go clean your room, you can have your Kindle. If you'll just go take a shower, like I got boys, right? And we're in a phase where showers are hard. I'm going to tell you, it's stinky in my house. If you'll just do your homework for the next 20 minutes, we can get it done, and you don't got to worry about it for the next day. And instead, we take an hour and a half of, I don't want to do that. Let me do it my way. And you know what? There are many versions of us. And they teach us what we act like whenever we have to do stuff we don't want to do. You know, I can always find something to do other than what I need to do. So what is it? Today, what is it? What do you need to release? What has got your hand inside that jar that you won't let go of and that you'll die holding on to? Rather than let God bring you joy and let God bring you peace. And that's only a question that you can answer in your own life. But I guarantee, if you'll do the work, the hard work of spiritual formation, if we can grasp that life is about transformation, not just getting our ticket punched and getting on the train to heaven, that the life of God is about changing who we are, that life, I believe this because I'm trying to live into this myself, that life will be more meaningful, life will be more peaceful, life will be more joyful, life will be more fulfilling if we'll let go of some stuff. And we'll let God have some stuff. And you don't have to do that alone. I don't want to ever stand up here and say, hey, you got to do this and you got to do that. Next Sunday we get back, you give me a report on how well you did this. If you need somebody to walk with you, find somebody in your life that you love and respect and that will be truthful and honest and love you back, and let them walk with you. Ask them to pray with you. Let's be helpful of each other and let's walk through life together. That's what church is about. It's a community of faith. It is brothers and sisters in Christ coming together so that we can walk through this life together and be a faithful witness of what God has called us to. I don't think we will upend this community, but I think we could do a lot of good in this community if they just see a group of people that are filled with joy and peace instead of anger and frustration and stress and anxiety. You look at the landscape of our culture right now, that's what our culture needs to see. They need to see people that in the midst of a lot of unknowns, our hope isn't in this. Our hope is in that. And that is bringing us joy and peace. I think there's another side to this too. I think that the world needs to see us bringing joy and peace, but we're really quick to rob the world of joy and peace. Noah is playing baseball right now. He enjoys baseball. Noah's 8. We sat at a game yesterday, and I'm part of the problem. And yesterday I spent a lot of time inside my own head just trying to work on my own heart in this. Parents do a really bad job of interacting with kids at sports events. I watched a bunch of eight-year-olds make some mistakes on the field yesterday, and I'm glad I wasn't coach. And one thing I had to keep telling myself all day yesterday was, they're 8 years old. They're 8 years old. They're 8 years old. So what if the shortstop caught the ball and he could have tossed it 2 feet and we could have ended the inning? The kid's 8 years old. It's okay. You know who's going to play pro baseball out of that group of 26 kids who were there? Odds are none of them. There were probably 500 kids playing ball yesterday in that ballpark in Mount Juliet. You know who will play baseball? Will play pro baseball or play pro softball? The odds are 0. You'd have to get together 20 years worth of kids in that park, and one of them might play pro sports. One of the things I've always told my boys, and I think I'm telling myself that now, you can play as long as you're trying your hardest and you're having fun. And when you stop doing either of those two things, we're going to stop playing. And what I'm realizing is we're helping them not have fun. We need to stop robbing the world of joy. You know in your own life who you're doing it to. We should be authors of joy. We should be bringers of joy. When we walk into a room, people should say, hey, Josh is here. It's going to be a good time. Instead of, oh no, Josh is here. Let me go find somewhere else to be. I think communion is one of the greatest resets for me every week. And that is because I get filled with joy again because I get to once again commune not only with God, but with the rest of you. And I get reminded every week that, you know what? God really loves me. God really loves you. And it's a joyful reset every week. It helps me to step out into the world next week on Monday, tomorrow morning, and hopefully tomorrow I'll be a little more joyful. Hopefully tomorrow the people I come in contact with, the ones that are most important to me, my wife, my kids, my mother-in-law, will see somebody who is at peace and filled with joy. Because that's who I am. This morning as you come to the table, there's fruit spread throughout, there's gluten-free bread everywhere. Take a moment and be thankful. Take a moment and let God fill you with joy, and then share that with somebody else. Be positive. Be peace. Be joy. Pray with me. God, for today, I'm thankful. I'm thankful I got to wake up today. Not another chance at life. I pray that as I gather around the table with my brothers and sisters in here, that we be renewed with the reality that you love us, and that should fill us with joy and peace. And hopefully everybody in here will take it to their homes, will take it to the world, will take it to their jobs, that the world will be filled because of you. Thank you so much. We love you. Help us love you more. And give us grace today. In Jesus' name. Amen. Come, let's go to the table.
I've heard 1,000 stories of what they think you're like, but I'm the tender whisper of love, the dead of night, and tell you that you're pleased and that I'm never alone. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. I've seen many searching for answers far and wide, but I know we're all searching for answers. Only you provide, 'cause you know just what we need before we say a word. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. Love so undeniable, I can hardly speak. Peace so unexplainable, I can hardly think as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still into love, love, love. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am.